I've more or less prepared the character for visualization in Unreal Engine, to be able to visualize my effects in-engine with decent quality. I modeled this character about 9 years ago. I had to adapt it for new software. Took some time to figure out importing the character, skinning, and rigging. Then camera, animation. 10 days have already passed, and I managed to try out some basic effects. Added a second antagonist character to make it more fun, to bring the heat. Super high-quality visualization isn't necessary for my task. Impressions of Unreal Engine after 10 days are quite good, though for the first couple of days, I was really hating it. Actually, it's an interesting experience, and I hope a useful one. Don't know if I'll post further progress videos, but that's how it is. 3D has never been my main specialization, but during a 3-year period, about 9 or 10 years ago, I did some sculpting, modeling, UV unwrapping. Basically, I did everything 3D related back then, but I was really frustrated by how long it took to render video. Used V-Ray in those days. Later, I stopped getting these kinds of tasks at work. I focused more on motion design, effects, and so on. Then I heard that Blender appeared with a real-time engine, and that was tempting. I really wanted to try it. It was kind of a dream of mine. But regarding work lately, I've been scouted more and more as a specialist for in-engine effects. So I needed to learn Unreal Engine. I took it on, but decided to prepare all characters and software new to me, which is Blender. I liked Blender right away. Very well thought out, lots of tools. I'd heard that modeling in it is quite good, and I decided not to go back to 3ds Max, which I used before. The character textures were lost. They didn't survive those 10 years. So basically the full process unwrapping, painting, everything I did in Blender. The character mesh is, I'd say, more or less acceptable. But back then, I was still learning how to model. So they were created with some flaws, let's say. I can make it better, but priorities are different right now. The main thing is to get everything ready for effects. So since no close-ups are planned, some average skinning will be enough. Tried different ways of creating skeletons and rigs. But eventually, I ran into a problem. I didn't want to waste time fixing it. Well, at least I got familiar with Blender's tools for this. Cleaned up the robot model because all those bolts were high poly. Yeah, so I did skinning for both characters in Blender. Actually, I ended up not using that. In the end, I created the skeletal mesh for Ivan in AccuRig, and I did some very minor skinning adjustments in Unreal Engine. This is what it looked like before the adjustments. Then I checked out Modular Rig for my skeletal mesh. Struggled a bit with character retargeting. Didn't polish it to perfection, but got the hang of it. Tried adding physics to the tailbones, but the result was meh. Didn't spend too much time on it. For the robot, I created the skeleton entirely in Unreal Engine, meaning skinning, rigging, and the skeleton itself, and a modular rig, but of a slightly different type. Got the control rig to an acceptable state for animation. There's still some gaps, but I'll catch up and improve. You run into bugs periodically and don't know. Is the problem me, or is it this engine? Unreal. Some features are still raw. Here the head shakes for no reason. You keep trying and trying with no result. And then the next morning, everything works fine. You're like, what the? Anyway, it eats up your time. The tailbones have issues periodically. It just doesn't stay in the right coordinates. Next on the plan was learning material creation, and then moving on to effects. Creating spherical effects in a vacuum is boring. So with these characters, the task becomes more meaningful. And in this case, I need destruction physics simulation. At first, I set it up in Blender. Everything was going great. But in the end, I couldn't transfer it to Unreal Engine. I created everything, but there's a problem during the import-export stage. To prevent setbacks from killing the workflow, I parallelized tasks and started working on effects. It's quite an interesting system. I really like the logic and approach to vector math here. Very convenient, very well designed. When I worked in After Effects, I wanted something like this. I used to simulate it myself, but here Unreal works like this out of the box. Then I went back to the robots' bolts and moved them to a displacement map. I have many cool frame-by-frame effect animations. To process and port them all to Unreal Engine, I scripted a tool that automates everything. I export a frame sequence from Animate, then run the script in Photoshop and select the folder to create a sprite sheet. The script can export with alpha or on a black background. It can also thin out the animation by skipping every other frame. The result is the required number of sprite sheets, with properly named effect titles. It also automatically adds the grid size to the name. I tested how these 2D effects look in the particle system and what can be done with them. Couldn't resist and created the character animation myself too. I like the tools and the possibilities. I did some 3D animation before, but in 3ds Max, not even Maya. In total, this took me a month. I explored cameras, animations, and simulations in Blender. Now I can finally focus on creating effects in Unreal Engine. Which is very exciting, and I can visualize it effectively. It's still a bit rough and crunchy. Textures aren't set up. The character can't blink. Well, moving from the big picture to the details.
Huh?